Hi there, my name's Matt. I'm the European Product Sales Manager for Boss, and we're here at Metropolis Studios in Studio B with Simon McBride, and we're here demoing the brand new Boss WAZA tube amp expander. So there's been a lot of hype around this product, and a lot of people have got a lot of questions. So what I want to do is talk you through the whole feature set of what this product is, what it's all about, and how you can use it in a beneficial way for you in live, studio, or just at home. So the tube amp expander, first and foremost, is a reactive load system. So what that is we take our amp, so we're using a Victory V30 here, and you would normally take that and plug it into a speaker cab, and that's how you get your sound. But a speaker cab can vary in so many different ways, and every time you plug an amp into a different speaker cab, it's going to feel and sound and respond very, very differently. So the idea behind a reactive load is it mimics the impedance curve of a speaker. So what we can do is we can plug our amp into this box, and this then becomes our speaker. It basically mimics what a speaker cab would be doing, and it tricks your amp into what it's seeing. Now, unlike most of the units on the market, what we've actually done is built in 16 different reactive loads into this one box. So think of it like 16 different cabs in the studio or live or even at home. If you had this amp and you plugged it into 16 different types of speaker, 112, 412, 1x8, every one would make this amp sound and feel and respond very differently. So by going this into this, we can actually dial in the impedance curve, we can dial in the reactive load that we want. And then what we do is we actually load it down to 0 and run it through a neutral 100 watt Class AB power amp. So the advantage there, the second advantage going into reactive load, is that we then can attenuate the amp. But unlike most attenuators that will resist the load going into the speaker, what this will actually do is load it down to 0, run it through the power amp, and then we've got 100 watts to play with. So you can take a 40 watt amp and make it 100 watts, or you can take a 1 watt amp and make it 100, or you can take a 100 watt amp and run it all the way down to minimal volume. Now, because we're not resisting the load going into the speaker, we don't lose any tone as we turn down the volume. So what we're going to do is we've simply got the amp set up, Simon's going to do some playing, and what we're going to do here is we're feeding the speaker out into a cab in the live room in there, which we've got mic'd up with 2 cabs, and then we're feeding it out into the Genelex here. So this is just the sound of the amp. Now what I can do is I can turn it down or I can turn it up, but you'll notice that as I turn it up, the sound just gets louder, it doesn't change. A lot of times when you attenuate an amp, you'll actually feel and hear the sound actually change. So if someone does a bit of playing, so from that point, what I can then start to do is actually dial in the load or the speaker load that I want the amp to see. So if we take our volume, you notice how each one is changing the tone of the amp? We're not physically actually doing anything to this. All we're doing is telling it it's seeing a different speaker cab. Each one of those cabs will make that amp feel and respond very, very differently. And it's not just the sound, it's the feel under the fingers as well. There's no right or wrong, you can dial it in however you want. You can sit here and tweak it to the point that you feel that it's really responding the way that you want to. So if you just give us a bit. So what we can do there is that now we've got a speaker load, we've got our amp responding how we want it to, and then we can feed it out into a speaker cab. So if you're using it live, for example, that's your speaker volume. You know, if you're using it at home, that's your volume. So if you've got a big monstrous amp and you need to turn it down for the neighbours, there's your volume. Now, if you're using it for recording or studio, we actually give you 2 XLR outputs, and we can feed it straight into monitors. So what you're going to hear now is actually the sound. So now what we've got is continuous volume control over the line out sound. So everything you're going to hear now is purely 100% amp simulation. Then this is our speaker. So you can then go between your speaker sound and then your cab simulated sound as well. Or if you want, you can hear it straight into headphones. So you've got that same sound straight into headphones. What we'll do is we'll stick with the line out for a minute and we'll demonstrate a couple of the other features. So if we just take our standard guitar sound. The first thing we can do is dial in some reverb. So you can take a completely dry amp and what's nice is that we can actually have that same sound come out of the speakers. So if you've got an old amp that doesn't have any reverb on it, like an old Marshall Plexi or something like that, and you're cranking it, you try and run a reverb pedal into the front end, it's going to get very mushy. So really you want everything in an effects loop. The problem is your old amp might not have an effects loop, so we put one on board as well, alongside the reverb that you can dial in on the front panel. Plus, we also give you a bunch of effects. So, for example, here's some delay. So everything you hear in there is the amp into the tube amp expander, and then it's a 4x12 cab simulation, and then we're dialing the effects in that are built into here. Bring in the speaker volume. And then the whole state of that panel can then be saved and then recorded as a preset. So you can go out live, you can have a bunch of different effects, you can change channel on your amp, you can add reverb, EQ, dial all that in, and then simply record it with the GAFC foot controller, which we've got down here. Or you can do it all over MIDI as well. And then the last thing, just to show you, is just with the line out, we will just show a couple of the different speaker sims. But what's interesting with the speaker simulations is that you can actually load in your own impulse responses. So a lot of people now, if they're in a studio or live, they've got a particular cab sound that they like and they want to keep using, and they want to take it out live. They might use it in the studio and they want that same consistent sound. So you can actually load 4 of your own impulse responses into this, take it out live. You can still have your speaker out volume, so on stage you can have all your cab volume, but your engineer can have all of the front of house volume with its own impulse responses as well. So you can really start to dial in your ideal sound, both in the studio, at home, and live. So let's just go through a couple of the cab sims here. So what we did there is we just did a couple of 4x12s and a 2x12. Alongside that, we give you mic type, mic distance, mic position, and then we also give you a room mic as well. So you can have an anechoic chamber, you can have a small room or a big room. So live, you can still have that all going front of house. In the studio, you can dial it all in. Lastly, we also give you USB, so you can use this as door control or an interface as well, so you can record direct into this via USB. MIDI functionality, as I said, effects loop, and then we've got the headphone outs as well. So that's a kind of basic overview of everything that the Tube Amp Expander does. If you need to find out any more, please head to boss.info.